sorry about that. I got cut off. So coming back to orgasm, the researchers at the time I had made this PowerPoint weren't sure why it happens in some women, but it was especially prominent as something that could happen after picking exercise up, and the related phenomenon that occurs alongside orgasms is that exercise as a whole is more likely to help women who have depression reach orgasm. So if you've ever been with someone who is on medications or has depression, you might notice that those medications can make it very challenging for them to achieve orgasm. Even if they're having a great time during the act of sex itself, they might just not be able to get to that point. And it's very common, happens all the time, and it's nothing to be ashamed about, of course, but the likelihood of reaching orgasm is more common in women who pick up exercise and use it in combination with their medications when they're trying to treat or alleviate symptoms of depression. Women who also exercise are more likely to rate on surveys that their orgasm intensity increases after having gone from being sedentary to being more active. So if you are someone who's currently an inactive person and you pick up an exercise routine and you stick to it for 2 to 6 months, then you should experience much more intense orgasms when you do have them. From the fun stuff, we go back to something that's a little less fun, and that's a question that was coming up in the research is, could cycling be dangerous? And the answer seems to be yes, with some caveats, right? So could cycling be dangerous? And the risk is in people who cycle a lot, competitive cyclists. People who are on their bikes for many, many, many hours at a time. And cycling can negatively affect sexual functions for both men and women who compete at very high levels. And the primary causes of that would be urinary tract infections and perineal numbness. So the perineal nerve is the nerve that goes from the spinal cord to your genitals and to your anus. So the rationale is that if you're sitting on your bike seat for hours and 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 hours, that numbness that you might experience from the constant pressure on it could cause permanent damage. So in that conflicting data from 2017, it was a meta-analysis. The researchers didn't have a clear-cut example of when is too much cycling to be dangerous. So odds are that if you're a recreational cyclist, you will not be at risk of cycling so much that it damages your perineal nerve or causes urinary tract infection. But if you're a high-level athlete or you're doing lots of ultra-marathon, like triathlons, you might be at a higher risk, and it should be something that you be on the lookout for. So when you're we've talked about, how can you make sex better, but what can sex do for you, right? So sex is considered a physical activity. You are burning calories in it. Your heart rate is going up. And so you have a lot of different things that are going on that can benefit you. So there are studies that have shown stronger immune function for people who are having more frequent sexual activity. It could be correlation, of course. It might not be causal, but it's something to keep in mind. The data is out there. There is a improved libido for people who do have higher sexual frequency. So the more sex that you're having, the more likely it is that you will want to be having more sex, and it can improve your bladder control. So if you are someone who has had problems with incontinence, having a higher sex frequency is going to improve your ability to control your incontinence. If you are having sex, you are more likely to have lower blood pressure, and that could be for a number of different reasons. It could be the exercise portion of the sex, could be from the release of serotonin and oxytocin, being with a partner who cares about you, right? All kinds of different things. And it does count as exercise. If you've never seen a MET is a metabolic equivalent. So 1 MET is 3.5 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body mass consumed during an activity. So if you're having sex, vigorous sexual activity, you're working at 3 to 5 times the rate of calorie usage as you are when you're at rest. There are great correlative studies about lowering the risk of heart attack. You have to have at least sex twice a week to reduce your risk of heart attack. It lessens chronic pain both in your back and in your legs. Not sure why that's going on, but there is good correlative data for it, and for migraines too, which was really cool. And it's, for men, there is a decreased likelihood of prostate cancer, and that is based on all forms of orgasm, whether it's masturbation or sex. You can improve your sleep, and you can just have general stress relief overall based on the hormonal changes of having more sex. Now, this is the last part of the talk that I had gone through that was meant to be just mostly lighthearted and fun, and that was what would be different sex-specific moves that you could add to your repertoire to make yourself better at sex. The idea being that, if I want to train someone to be better at soccer, I give them soccer-specific moves. If I want to be better at football, I give them football-specific moves. If I want them to be better at baseball, I give them baseball-specific moves. So the idea being that we're going to pick moves that could easily translate over to a sexual activity that you might be doing. So the first one here we have is a Zercher squat, cradling the barbell in the crook of your arms as if you were holding your partner by their legs in the crook of your arms. If you're holding in there, it's going to be a lot more emphasis on your biceps. Also, it's a great alternative to the front squat in general. It's going to be a bit more quad dominant, but you'll also feel your core quite nicely while you're doing a Zercher. A farmer's walk is another really good one, in my opinion, because it's a combination cardiovascular endurance exercise and strength exercise, and it works your grip strength, right? So having a really good grip, depending on your kink, is going to be very important to your sex life. And having that combination strength and cardio at the same time is going to be, in my opinion, pretty important, whether you like to be choked or not, something like that. I picked a side lunge being a sex-specific move in large part because of the fact that if you're doing side-to-side lunges, you're going to be improving the flexibility of the pelvic floor and improving its elasticity. And it's when they do EMG studies on the side lunge, you see a lot of activity in pelvic floor muscles at the same time. So we talked about exercises for the pelvic floor. This is a way of adding it into a regular routine. A body saw, if you've ever, I'm sure everyone has done a missionary position. You got to maintain that core posture, right? And the body saw is an exercise where you are pushing your body back and forth. Your elbows are planted, your feet are sliding, and it's a very intense core exercise. For some women, you might experience a coregasm from this particular move. The further back you can push before your low back collapses and you lose form, the more intense it's going to be. A bridge is a great sex move as well, whether you are a man on the bottom or a woman on the bottom. Anyone can be in a bottom position. Anyone could be a power bottom, right? And you can I like to add weights and do hip thrusts as a variation of a bridge exercise, where I'll put my shoulders up and onto a bench, and I'll put a bar across my hips, a couple 100 pounds, and then lift the weights up and from the floor. Anyone can do this exercise 1 foot, 2 foot. The less feet you have on the ground, if your hands are off the ground, the more your pelvic floor is going to be working. And then this is a bit more advanced. If you're the bottom, your feet would be up in the air, and so would your butt or your vagina, and your partner can stand over you and jackhammer you, which I think is a great move. Awesome. 10 out of 10. This is a judo push-up. Starting in basically a downward dog, you move from downward dog into up dog. And it's certainly an exaggeration of a, pelvic thrust, unless you are extremely well blessed, in which case, good on you. And then this last one I wanted to, I think it's the last one. Yeah, this is my last one in the slides, the cable chop. And I picked the cable chop in large part because cable chops are incredible rotational exercises where you are using a lot of core. It's particularly the fact that there's a lot of coordination in the exercise, so that, of course, your obliques, internal and external obliques, are going to be firing a lot, but as you twist your pelvis with the chop, the pelvic floor muscles are also going to be working, and you might be using a move or two that might say use a rope over a door jamb, or you got to pull that rope down and do a little bit of a pulley move for that to get someone up and into position on your sex swing. So depending on how you have your sex swing set up, you're going to need to take advantage of the cable chop. So that is the end of the Sexercise lecture that I had given. So to kind of go back through it, whether you're a man or a woman, there are certain risks associated with sedentary behavior. And there are unique benefits. You want to avoid the sedentary behavior because it can have a negative impact on your sex life. And this is not a talk about saying like, oh, you have to look as good as you possibly can and then people will start to have sex with you. It's more about the performance side of things, right? And on the flip side is that sex is going to help make your life a little bit better and a little bit nicer in terms of reducing your risk of heart attacks, in terms of helping you sleep better, in terms of, just making you feel more comfortable as well. I'm aware that there are people who are ace and asexual, so that, this doesn't have to apply to them. The improved benefits of, say, the orgasms for reducing prostate cancer are still there. You still are at risk of having, any one of these disorders if you are ace. So you still should be, in my opinion, you should still exercise to, maintain your sexual health. Even if you're not interested in it. I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and hope you learned something from it. Bye.